Welcome to the latest episode of Surgeons' Lives. I'm your host, John Monson. My guest today is Dr. Stephen Stain, who is currently the chairman of the Department of Surgery at the Lahey Clinic in Burlington, Massachusetts. Born in Texas, he grew up and did his initial training in California, where he was launched into a highly successful surgical career by a series of outstanding mentors. He developed his academic seniority initially in Tennessee and then became chairman of the Department of Surgery in Albany in upstate New York. Unfortunately, things didn't play out as he planned there with a change of leadership, and before too long he landed in his current position in Lahey. He's a thoughtful man who has much to say that will be of use to any surgeon, either starting their career or indeed in the more mature years of a career. He has seen most things and is a wise opinion leader in many aspects of surgery. So, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and send us whatever comments you may have. In the meantime, without further ado, let's move ahead and listen to my guest, Dr. Stephen Stain. I'm John Monson, and this is Surgeons' Lives. Welcome and thanks for joining today. I appreciate you taking time.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this. My kids are excited, but they always listen to podcasts, and I don't listen to podcasts. So they said, please send us a link to the podcast link.
Well, we produce this or I produce it in two forms. One is the YouTube version, and for people who prefer to watch.
Yeah.
And it's on all the usual podcast platforms for people who prefer to listen. So you can be heard in either version. So normally what I do is I start by asking, which I'll ask you, to start with a little background of your life, starting with the words "I was born in."
I was born in San Antonio, Texas, and they say once a Texan, always a Texan. I left when I was 3 or 4 years old, moved to California, and grew up mostly in Fresno, California, and was there until age 20. So I am the son of a physician who was a family medicine doc. My mother was a court reporter who actually immigrated at age 6 from Haiti through Ellis Island to New York City. Her name was written in the Ellis Island book. And my father and mother met while he was a medical student at Howard University, and they're both Howard graduates. And I still consider Fresno home. Go back once a year at least, see friends.
And then obviously your dad was your dad the trailblazer in the family for college and etc. Not college, medical school. I mean, etc. etc.
Oh, and probably college too. So, and definitely my mother's side. My mother was the first college graduate of her family. My father was trained as a gynecologist in first Black graduate of I think it's Green. It's at the hospital in San Antonio, the public hospital,
Yep.
Bear County, what it was called, Robert B. Green, I think. And then he, for a number of reasons, practiced family medicine, but he still, throughout his career, um, uh, did surgery. He did, when I was a kid, he did tonsillectomies, he did appendectomies, and he delivered babies. And I went into medicine planning to be a family medicine doc. That's sort of what my plan was, but I was going to do 3 years of medicine, and I wanted to deliver babies, so I'd do a year of OB and peds. I'd be a family medicine doc, and that all got changed from my surgery rotation.
And
There.
you stayed in California at this stage.
Yeah, I went to college at University of California, Irvine,
Yep.
and then I stayed there for medical school,
Right.
and then trained at LA County.
And then surgery beckoned during your medical school years, obviously, your surgery rotation.
Yeah, it was so Irvine surgery in the 80s, 79 to 83 when I was a medical student. Um, you know, it was quite exciting. So um, Bob Bartlett, who was the one who invented ECMO, had been in Irvine. He just left, but during my second year of medical school, there was a guy named Alan Gazaniga, who was a this big guy. I think he played football at Yale, had huge hands, and he did everything from pediatric cardiac surgery to appendectomies. And so it was. I won't call it quite the Wild Wild West, but um, you had these monsters of surgery that were there. The chairman was G. Robert Mason, a bariatric surgeon out of Iowa. And on my surgery rotation, a third year student, there was a black woman chief resident named Dorcas Hill, who I think she was a New Yorker. She was kind of a fast talking person, became a thoracic surgeon, cardiothoracic surgeon. And then, but I loved internal medicine because of the complexity of taking care of medical problems. So, uh, general surgery, general surgeons at least attempt to know something about medical conditions and don't just say you're an orthopedist and or have the hospitals take care. So even though I do love surgery, operative technical surgery, I think that it's important to have the knowledge of taking care of medical conditions to provide good care because sometimes uh, my experience is subspecialists, internist consultants may not grasp the entire picture.
Sure.
So that's why general surgery is what I went into, and that's what it's funny now when you fill out all these surveys of what are you,
Yeah.
I still, you know, I used to be a liver surgeon. I still keep I actually, I don't know, it's the sixth time I recertified for critical care. Um, but I still check the general surgeon box. And when students say, I just want to be a general surgeon, I say, never say just,
Yeah.
because a general surgeon has lots of skills to do lots of things. They may not do it based on their practice settings, but they've been trained to do a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. And when you were deciding to, residency applications, what was the plan? Did you plan to run away from California, or was it just whoever took you? What was the?
Well, it was a different area. I think I applied to 8 places. I
Yeah.
mean, and why would you ever leave California? I mean, I still think, I still love California. I was back for the college, and it's quite different. But I thought I would never leave California. I was influenced, so I did two fourth-year electives. One at San Francisco General Hospital, and one at Mayo Clinic. And
Okay.
they were both very different. The San Francisco General Hospital, I was exposed to really quaternary academic surgeons who were, Donald Trunke was the chief of trauma there. And I was, so for the fourth year rotation, they had two services, the trauma, sort of the most exciting service to be on, or the pus extremity service. I got put on the pus extremity service where we drained shooters' abscesses,
Yeah.
but I still took trauma call, and I've been on call twice with Dr. Chunky. And this probably was a life-changing event for me. He asked me, "Could I write you a letter of recommendation?" I hadn't been on his service. I talked to him in the locker room a few times, We joked about how stressful an environment UCSF is. They had a lot of suicides from residents at the time. But he asked me, and I said, "Well, Dr. Chunky, thank you very much. I'm not your service. If you would just sign off the residence evaluation, that would be great." He said, "No, no, no. I want to personally write you a letter." And
Wow.
and I and I think that I've never gone back and looked at my USC application file, but I think his letter probably carried a lot of weight.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, let me ask you, in your career, have you ever said the same thing to a medical student?
All the time, not all the time, but there was a
Yeah.
student 2 years ago, I mean, a year ago, who was a tough student, was a superstar. He did like marine biology undergrad. He wanted to do all this great stuff. And I asked him, "Can I write?" And he just came for advice. He didn't ask for a letter. Can
Sure.
I
Yeah.
write you a letter?
Yeah.
And and he matched at the University of Washington.
Yeah. I mean, it's a, as you said, it's an inspiring gesture. And I, I'm not sure I'm not sure I've heard of somebody, spontaneously saying that, but I can imagine it would be hugely inspiring and a great thing, a great thing to do. I spent, you're talking about the the extremity pus service. In my first surgical year, in Dublin, in inner city Dublin, I did spend a year, and my favorite patient was when I said to him, "What is this stuff that was coming out of his arm?" And he said, "Yeah, it's mayonnaise." I went, "What?" So what was the theory behind mainlining mayonnaise? So he didn't really have an answer to that. So so you landed for your
Yes.
residency.
So this was the time um, when I was the last year of a pyramid program.
Yeah, yeah,
So in July, 10 of us started, and in October, four of us were told you're not coming back.
yeah,
And that's just how it was.
yeah,
And it was the last year at LA Kind of they had that, but you know, and I when I talk to students now, you know, I mean, and sometimes being arrogant is a good thing. Of course, they're going to take me.
yeah,
I don't know who the other five are going to be,
yeah,
but of course they're going to take me. And so the six of us who were selected, I was looking at a picture. I'm giving a talk of my intern class. Um, four of them have retired. There's two of us still working, but we were very close. And as I've gone back for funerals at USC for my mentors, the six of us usually still all come
yeah.
back for funerals, which is kind of shows how tight knit we were.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Yeah, yeah,
The other thing I was going to say about Mayo Clinic was this was 1981, 82, 82. At Mayo Clinic in 82, you could order a CT scan at 7:30 in the morning, and by noon there'd be a typewritten
yeah.
report on the patient's chart. And I don't know a place that's that efficient. Um, and
Yeah,
maybe other
that's their
places,
thing.
yeah. This is so they really are quite efficient, and the care of the patient was really really good. And the way that so the consultant would start like on the high floor, and he or she would go to different places where they had interned already a patient on a platter waiting for them
Yeah,
to be for an operation.
yeah,
It was quite impressive.
yeah. Their reputation, of course, is excellence of care with justification. But I was a fellow there for a year, and their real expertise is they have their act together. in the most amazing way across the board. And as much as anything else, that brings excellence of care. There's not a lot of headless chicken activity uh, around there. So your first fellowship, I think, was what, critical care, yeah?
Well, so this is the days of a super chief. So you got to say they picked one person a year to do the research, and most years it was vascular. The guy person stayed and did vascular, and this was just as vascular fellowships were coming on. So my year, they needed someone to run the breast service and the ICU. So, so I ran. It's whoever they needed, and so I had my own service where I had the breast service, and for the breast service, this is LA County, and they had the advantage of free meals for residents.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
you had to make breakfast by 9 o'clock because the cafeteria closed. So you had to get your mastectomy done before 9. So that was sort of how. So I did breast, and we had the ICU. There was a guy from shock trauma, Bobby Shore, who was the ICU director. So I learned critical care and I learned breast. And when I finished my super chief year, um, I had a practice mostly in breast. And I still have a couple of patients who I still keep in touch with from breast from the early 90s, who I took care
Goodness.
of, are still doing well. Let me see.
So, do you recall, did you know what your ambition was other than making breakfast at 9 a before 9 a.m.?
Not at all. So I've had these pivotal conversations in my life. One of them um, at the USC, alumni cocktail party. I met a guy named Anya Aquari. Anya Aquari was a USC medical school graduate, trained at Mayo Clinic, was an R1 funded investigator at Duke. And we started there and we're talking about, because I was going to go into private practice.
Right.
And,
Okay. Yeah.
and he told me literally that too much had been invested in me to go into private practice. I mean, and it was one of those things, I'm just a regular guy. Um, and so Eddie Cornwell, who has stepped down as chair at Howard, he was a year ahead of me. He was the fifth African American to finish at LA County in 70 years. He was so good they took two blacks the next year, Emil Exame and I. And I thought about that I had pretty extraordinary training, and I thought that and nobody offered me a job in LA.
Yeah.
So
That
they offered
helps.
me a job there, and I stayed, and I got, and then because at the time when Les Blumgart's book, the two people who wrote the trauma chapters were my two surgeons, Art Donovan and Tom Byrne,
Okay.
the liver trauma chapters.
Yeah.
So he said, "Why don't you go to Bern, Switzerland?" I said, "Well, okay." So I flew over and met Dr. Blumgart, which was quite he's a very impressive person, and he thinks pretty highly of himself. And I came back thinking, you know, um, that would be an interesting experience to go live in Switzerland for a year, because he
Yeah.
didn't never really spoke German. He had fellows. So my year there was a fellow from Australia, a fellow from England, Ashley. What's Ashley's name? It'll come to me in a second. From
The guy from Australia was Guy Mattern.
Guy Matter,
Yeah.
um, Ashley Dennison,
Yeah.
um, and then a guy from Germany. So most of us, and then also Jeff Matthews did that fellowship.
Yeah.
Mark Perloff did that fellowship.
Yeah.
But what you didn't realize till you got there is you watched. You didn't just you
Well,
didn't do the liver sections. And there was some senior faculty, Philip Gerich, and he couldn't do liver. So I mean, Blumgart did every liver that came in, unless he was out of town. he had the livers. But you didn't realize how much you could learn from a master surgeon doing operation. Then I came back, and everyone thought I had this tremendous experience. Probably equally important was the cultural experience of living overseas.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that probably matured me more than I can ever imagine. Just living overseas, not really speaking the language, having to kind of learn a little bit of German to get by, and that probably made me a more mature person, not just
Yeah,
sort of.
I'm sure there's I'm sure there's great truth in that, the Europeans, because of the geography, I mean, it's just global geography. Europeans are much better travelers than Americans in terms of surgery and the ability to go and see a different culture, a different way, a different people is a it's important in life, isn't it?
So I got to go spend because I was supposed to come back and do ERCP when I got. So Demeester had arranged for me to go spend 6 weeks with doing upper endoscopy in Rotherham, England.
Right.
So 6 weeks doing, and then I also, and it was amazing. They was a awake endoscopy. I mean, it was awake upper endoscopy. It was sort of just amazing. They would, give very little bit of sedation. They would just put down the scope. They'd see everything. They'd come back. They did 6 weeks of ERCP in.
You know why you do know why the awake endoscopy thing exists.
No,
Mostly
I don't.
it's because there's nowhere to recover the patient if you sedate them. So they have to, you can't have 20 patients recovering from propofol. Where are you going to put them all? So, I spent years endoscoping people with just spray the back of the throat.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, spray, and you could tell if, when you spray the back of the throat, if there's a huge amount of gagging going on, this is not going to be good. Whereas if you can see down their esophagus when you're spraying their throat, you're fine. You're going to be fine. And they just get up and go home.
yeah. I didn't realize that's why they did it. I
Oh
thought they
yeah,
were just
yeah.
like.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think, if you're having an ERCP these days, you'll be sedated, that's for
yeah.
sure. But there was a big issue, if you think about it, doing 20 uppers in a morning, you need somewhere to put people if they're sedated.
I didn't realize that was the reason. Um, and then the other cultural thing about living in Europe for a year was just how close everything was. So,
Yeah.
so you know, I went to the Montreux Jazz Festival. I saw Sting. I went to the bicycle um,
Tour de France.
Tour de France.
Yeah.
You get a train, and in 4 or 5 hours you're in Paris.
Yeah.
It was just I went to Amsterdam. So I think I grew a lot as a person in that time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So fast forward then, where is your next landing zone?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm not sure there's going to be a next landing zone. I
No, I
mean,
mean after burn, I mean.
after Britain, from there, then
Yeah.
I went back to USC and I was on the faculty for
Yeah.
8 more years,
Yeah.
and then Tom Demeester became chair.
Yeah.
And you know, he and I, um, you know, didn't always see eye to eye, and at some point, I decided to move on,
Yeah.
and that took a couple 3 years to find someplace, and then all of the out of the blue, I get asked to go look at Meharry Medical College as chair. Claude Organ was on the board of directors for Meharry, but all my interviews were with Vanderbilt people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what had been the tradition was um, the Vanderbilt residents came to National General Hospital on Meharry's campus, and for those 6 years, I met some incredible people who are now leaders in American surgery who were residents. And people tell stories of me taking PG3s through Whipples, which was,
Yeah.
they still,
Unusual.
but they still remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris Jones, who is the chief of transplant at Louisville, Carl Schmidt. I could name 10 people who, just from that time, spending 2 months with me, um, Carter Terhune, who is the vice dean of education at Vanderbilt. She was an intern, and over the years, those relationships from that time have been probably in some ways the most productive mentoring time of my career,
Yeah.
just those six
Yeah.
years, because they're very motivated, smart, energetic people who you could just see their career trajectory was going to be great. And
Yeah.
then as you see them go through career, you could really take as John Tarpey said, everyone takes credit for the superstars that you touched a little bit along their way up.
True. Yeah. Yeah, he was one of my guests on this actually about a year ago. I think it's called TARP Talks.
Mhm.
And so from Tennessee to Albany?
Yes, um, I outgrew Meharry only because of not having your own residency. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and actually, it's funny when I give people advice about interviewing for jobs. I tell them how many jobs I've interviewed and not gotten. But the Albany job was special because of the dean there, who was just a great person. Vince Verdile, who was an ER doc, and he said you could recruit 15 people over the next 5 years. I had 15 over the first 2 years, and he said recruit whoever you want. And so I had almost and because the clinical volume was increased, we built a new tower, and surgery just really grew there by finding good people who would
Yeah.
want to come live in upstate New York. And I think that administratively I learned a lot about how to run things. I somehow I got elected to be on the American Board of Surgery, and from that, it was I've been fortunate that I usually say what I think, and and I don't believe I'm looking for the next position and then the American Board of Surgery used to have, I don't know if they do it now, they had an open um, election, blinded,
Yeah.
people vote for you, and I lost. I lost to Russell Postier, who was a Hopkins guy. We were the same year. And then Courtney Townsend said to me, "Oh, don't worry, I'll get you elected next year," just like that. And you think of and that was the I guess what I learned from that is that there are people in certain positions of power,
Yeah.
and it's backdoor stuff. I don't know how it happened. I didn't know. Now I know how it happens, but I say that because on today, this evening, we have a nominating committee for the new president of the American Surgical Association. I'm on the nominating committee. And I've already seen how people have lobbied before and afterwards. You get there, and the person who they want got the votes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that getting elected as chair of the American Board of Surgery was, you know, it cemented my interest in trying to improve how we train people. I'm still not sure we're there, but I think that's something that's I've continued to work on.
So, it's very interesting, your description of that. Courtney, I've known Courtney since the mid 80s,
Uh-huh.
when he was a BJS traveling fellow to England. Um, and we remain very good friends. And, Courtney is a remarkable individual by any standards. And you said, you try to say what you think. Of course, when some people say what they think, it gets them into trouble, and it doesn't do very well. And I've always been intrigued by how successful Courtney has been, despite him being, Texas through and through and having quite a sense of humor. But I've always felt that the real thing that people see with Courtney is authenticity. He doesn't say much, really, but when he does, it's real.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have so many things that I learned just from listening. And the time I was on the board, there are these giants: David Feliciano, Courtney Townsend, and you would just see these titans going back and forth. And the nice thing was at the time, you could say anything you wanted, and it didn't leave the room.
Yeah,
If people could argue to their point, and there was never any hard feelings about I'm trying to win this over on you. And I think Frank Lewis and I got into it a few times, and at the time everyone checked your ego at the door, and you would have some hard conversations about how. So we went through, at that time I was on the board, the approval of integrated vascular surgery for residency. We went through the Fabrizio Michelozzi and Carlos Pellegrini got through uh, surgical oncology fellowship,
yeah,
and seeing how they did that by maneuvering through all the people who wanted to keep general surgery general, was really remarkable that they. So I saw some master negotiators. So the term complex general surgical oncology
yeah,
was a trade off to Tyler Hughes, who wanted to have the word complex in there because general surgeons can do surgical oncology in his mind.
yeah.
But it passed unanimously after a year of lobbying by Fabrizio. So
So you said you just commented there that you could what went on in the room stayed in the room, um,
uh-huh.
and so people were willing to, as you say, go at it for a bit and walk away and still shake hands, etc. Somebody said to me a few weeks ago, senior surgeon said to me, surgery is not a nice place to be as much now as it was in earlier years. There's a degree of nastiness about it, whether it's, climbing over each other to be president of this or chairman of that or whatever, etc. And, I wasn't sure what to say about it, but I think I can see what he was getting at. And maybe it's just a reflection of the world in which we live. Um, but it's certainly, you get a sense that there is that edge to it that didn't exist before. Is that something that resonates with you or?
I guess I see it a little differently. I see people who are more politically correct just so they can be, so I'm a regent of the college,
Yeah,
and there's a saying among us people who are mid-level: everyone in the room wants to be the chair of the board of regents. you know, that's not my. I mean, if I am, great. If I'm not, it's fine. I think that it is. I've been president or chair of more things than I deserve. I think that the college, as I've said, needs to go through some radical change because it is, young. I mean, I joined because my chair said I had to join.
yeah,
My residents may not join. And now when you have limited amount of money for CME and for societies, they may make a financial decision not to join, and they may just be a colorectal surgeon, called the ASCRS, and they
yeah,
may not join the college. So if the college is going to remain relevant, then they need to recognize that just paying money, I just paid my dues today. I counted my chapter and my local, this is $1,000.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
Fortunately, because of where the position I have funds I can pay for all those things. But the average, faculty member does not.
Oh yeah, if you throw college and ASCRS and SSO and SSAT in there,
You're spending your own money after that. And you want to go to a meeting?
yeah,
And
exactly. And you know that the famous Monty Python phrase, what did the Romans ever do for us? Well, I think I agree with you. I think the college is facing that. What does the college do for you? Is something that it requires some serious thought.
well, so 6 or 7 years ago, they said, well, yeah, we build in average 3% increase every year. We give our employees a 5% increase year. And I said, that's not the life most of us live. I mean, it would be nice, but in a time when, well, I remember the days when, all this stuff was deductible. I had my own corporation. I ran after my corporation at USC, and it was like, so it was okay. But now, my typical faculty only gets $5,000 a year for stuff.
If that, if
Yeah,
that.
and I understand, their salaries sound high when we hire people, but I lived in a different time when
Yeah.
it was easy. My kids were very young to live on 250 or $300,000. Nowadays, if you make that amount of money, which sounds like a lot of money to the layperson, but you live in a big city,
Yeah, it goes easily. It
very
goes
quickly.
goes easily. So then Lahey calls.
Yes.
I mean, why?
So I would say I've been quite fortunate that because I've remained academically productive, when I've wanted to leave, I could always find something to do. And
Yeah.
I had a run-in with my administration at Albany, um, and I just didn't want to work there anymore. And I said, okay, I'll take a year and a half. I'll find something. Interviewed at 3 or 4 places, and what's not known by many people, the first time I interviewed at Lahey, I was not selected. They picked somebody, and I didn't come back for a second visit. I don't think.
It doesn't say that on the board, you know.
And then 6 months later, I won't say who the person who they couldn't come to a deal with was. I know who it was now. They called back and said, after not bringing back even for a second visit, would you reconsider?
Yeah. Well, I think the answer to that was I hadn't reconsidered in the first place. It was
so,
you.
I came back, and it is the position at Leahy is much different than other places,
Yeah. Mm.
but it's a platform that I can still get what I want to do with. We had interviewed medical students for residency day. I like education. I got to operate yesterday. I had a hard case that it wasn't a hard case. It was a hard case for me. It was started out to be a bilateral, inguinal hernia repair. Um, got in the wrong plane, and the nurse. So sometimes I get lucky. I had this exceptional nurse scrub with me, who's a transplant nurse,
Yeah.
and she's so nice. She said, "Well, Dr. Stain, do you want me to get the open sets ready just in case?" And she said, I said, "Well, give me 10 more minutes." Because we were part intraperitoneal, part fine. So yeah, why don't you just open it? And then we did, and he had, his sigmoid colon in his left groin, and he had previous bilateral recurrent hernias, and we did an old fashioned, plug and patch repair on both sides. and I saw him in the recovery room. He said, "I had no pain at all." You know?
Exactly. Yeah, he'll be the guy that'll send you a bottle of wine, So, how would you like to be, not that you're on the way out, but how would you like to be remembered, and how do you think you will be remembered?
Oh, I think I will be remembered. I hope to be remembered as having influenced a number of trainees for their careers. Um, and I'm very proud of some of those people. Well, all those people, but some of them are
Sure.
stand out. So Sherry Wren was
Yeah.
my first fellow at HPB fellow at USC, and she's now the full professor at Stanford, and she's a robotic surgeon. And I think uh, and she's now secretary of the American College of Surgeons. Ali Salim is chief of trauma at Brigham. He was a resident at USC. He was my brother-in-law's roommate in medical school, and I got to know him at USC, and we've remained close friends. So there are people out there.
Yeah.
Chris Anderson's head of chair at surgery at Mississippi. So I hope I'm remembered by people, and then when I see those people at meetings, I get recharged by the memories they have
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Uh,
And today, 2024, are you optimistic for a young surgeon, or are you concerned for a young surgeon starting out?
I'm concerned, but it's the best career possible, without a doubt. It is, but you have to be willing to be patient. You have to be willing to be. You have to be excellent, and you have to. So I'm giving grand rounds at Cornell on Monday. Talk's still not finished, but that's not unusual for me. And one thing that I've been doing the last couple of places I've done is I look at their graduates from 10 years ago. I ask, and you see how accomplished those people have been. Are
Yeah.
we keep thinking that they're going to have it tough. They're going to but you see what these people do when they finish. And I think two at Memorial. One's here with me, a thoracic surgeon. Um, and I just think that while we may think they're going to have it tough, but they persevere. And each of us had our own second thoughts and struggles. But you look at these people 10 years from when they finish residency from good places, they do very, very well. And it's and I hope they end up, uh, you know, as I have having I was a relatively balanced life. My kids will
Sure.
may question about that, but I think I have a relatively balanced life.
So I don't think anyone would disagree that it's the best job, there is. Um, the problem is that it's quite difficult to do the job nowadays, because the systems are designed, to make it difficult for you. I had a colleague a year or two ago who was kind of struggling with, a very extraordinarily talented surgeon and hardworking, but was struggling with, stress and behavioral issues. And he said to me, I'm really good at what I do, but it's as though there's someone in the hospital who wakes up every morning to decide, how can we screw with these people today? And that's not fair, he said, because I get blamed for the way I react.
Mhm.
And I think everyone recognizes that, don't we?
Well, I think you have to acknowledge you're a middle manager. I'm a middle manager, and I get the benefit of doing the things that I enjoy for being a middle manager. When a surgeon gets written up by a nurse for uh, yelling might be a little bit hard, but being tough on a circulator or scrub who does not have the things he or she asked for before the operation.
Yeah.
You get in the bleeding, you ask for it. and then you're sitting up, So I look at myself, which may not be the most attractive position, as the shield between the very talented surgeon and the administration, at least. And I'm learning, I'm not there yet, how to respectfully point out it wasn't just the surgeon who overreacted, it was the circumstances you put him in.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
can imagine Michael DeBakey just put his hand down, he got everything he needs. you know, whether it's like when that woman told me, Dr. Stain, you think, just in case, I'm not saying you're not gonna get this operation done, but do you want me to go see if we have the open set just in case? She did it in a way that was not threatening. We
Sure.
don't always get that kind of help. And I think that it is the role that we play in leadership to be able to get the benefits of having residents who we are so proud of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think so. I tell junior faculty that there's a big couple of evolutions you will go through. You go from the change of being hired and paid for what you do to being hired and paid for who you are. And because of some people believe I have some abilities to get some things done, I get to do what I do. I don't get paid on our views. I don't get paid on staff, but I do get rated about how our whole department does financially, social. So I'm willing to take that responsibility of moving a department forward. And some of it is, building a culture. Some of it is recruiting good people. Some of it is being the buffer between administrations. Because ultimately, what we do as surgeons, as a whole, is very important. First of all, for our patients. Secondly, for the hospital's finances. Thirdly, for taking care of society.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't look at it, I probably do think of it personally sometimes, but more importantly, when I'm, soberly examine what I do, I get great satisfaction of what I'm able to accomplish. But to do that, I got to do a lot of crappy things that I don't
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the 5 day rule. If you're in a job where you enjoy 3 days out of five, it's probably the right job. If it drops below that, it's a problem.
Right,
Nobody
right.
nobody has a 5 day job where they enjoy
Yeah,
every
yeah.
day.
Mhm.
Okay, let's pivot to away from this to some different thoughts in
Okay.
the last few minutes that remain to us. So, what happens when we die?
What happens when we die?
Yeah, what happens to us when we die?
Do you mean like, do I go to heaven? Do I go to hell? Or do you mean what happens behind me in my family and stuff?
I guess. Well, what about the first one?
Well, I'm a Christian. I believe there is an afterlife.
Okay.
Um, Probably, to me, a more interesting question is, do my kids believe that? I have three children,
Okay.
28, 26, and 23. Um, and The oldest told me last she was here in town last. Said, I started going to church again, which out of the blue.
Yeah.
It was out of the blue, and I think that I didn't ask why. I didn't say, but she started on her own going to church again. So, which was interesting.
People find their own journey through life, don't they?
Yes.
Um, so do you have a favorite movie?
Oh, I have. I have a number. I mean, I'm thinking of the Paul Newman movie where he was in prison. It was a long time ago.
In
Uh,
prison. Hmm. Blanking on
it,
that.
it'll come to me in a second. I watch an assortment of movies. I like everything from my kids say I like Hallmark Christmas movies. I also like shoot 'em up. um, army movies. So
Any
I
heroes?
don't watch as much uh, Netflix as I used to. But I think that probably once or twice a month, I'll sit and just see what's uh, on, and I'll sit there. My wife's out of town, and I will. Cool Hand Luke. That was the name of the movie.
Yeah.
Cool
Yeah,
Hand Luke.
yeah. Just furious Googling for both of us produced that. Yeah. Um, do you have a favorite book?
um,
Best book
Probably. Well,
ever?
probably. I don't remember names of books. Oh gosh, Malcolm Gladwell
Oh
book
yeah.
on.
I'm a huge Malcolm Gladwell
So
fan.
this was the book that opens up when they're an art dealer in Egypt trying to evaluate uh, whether a thing is real or fake. I'll have to Google that one too.
That's not the
And
original one.
and I think that what came out of that book, was being able to trust your instincts. And when I was trying to decide to take the job in Albany, Tom Russell said, "Go read this book." And uh, Blink is the name of the book.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah.
And I have learned to not thin slice things, to overanalyze it and trust my gut. And because I kept asking for more and more, so and they said, if and I and that's probably, I'm more of a um, make decisions based on my weighing the things without doing as much probably individual Excel spreadsheet. Said,
Yep.
I think this is a
Yeah.
good job or not, and I think I can make it work. And I think that is probably my favorite, probably my most book that's, it was a long time ago, and it had the most impact on how I approach problems. And I've learned to trust my instinct.
His original book was The Tipping Point.
Uh-huh.
And he's just released a book called Revenge of the Tipping Point. I mean, I have a reasonable commute each day, so I listen to audiobooks and I just finished
Uh-huh.
listening because I like listening to him. He has a great reading voice.
He reads his own
Um,
books. Uh-huh.
yes, he does. Yeah, he does. And The Revenge of the Tipping Point, where he simply revisits the issues that he discussed in The Tipping Point, it's well worth reading or listening.
I'll have to get that one.
Sure. So, if you were not a surgeon, what do you think? What would you be? What would you have been?
Um, well, it's too difficult, but I would have liked to have run a restaurant.
I think it,
so,
I think it's easy to run a restaurant. It's not easy to run a successful restaurant.
so I had so when I was 14 or 15, my mother, who always gave us children choices, you can either do the yard work or go get a job. Because and my brother and I, who's 2 years older than me, we went to work at a restaurant. And I started making $1.32 an hour working as a dishwasher and preparing food. I'm still probably a harsh critic at restaurants, but I do enjoy great service. So I'm not sure if I could do that, because I think that's very difficult. And I have some restaurants here in town that I enjoy and go to, but that's what I would like to. And there was a time when two of my high school friends and I thought about that. They're still back in California, but we thought about what would be to try to run a restaurant. But it's a lot of hard work to do it right.
Would you be a Gordon Ramsay character?
No, I think that I have I've had the opportunity on two occasions to go to a Michelin rated restaurant, and only two. And and the quality of service it takes to deliver that kind of experience
Yeah.
is really, it's really, I mean, it is you know yeah, so I think that I really appreciate what goes into the ingenuity, and I've read some books about what it takes to be a Michelin star restaurant, and I think it's a high
It is.
aspirational goal.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to go to quite a few Michelin starred restaurants, and I think my experience has been that for the ones that are truly outstanding and reflect everything that you've just
Yeah,
said, you also encounter the ones that are spectacularly pretentious
yeah.
and really, have lost the spirit of what they're meant
Mhm.
to be doing. So but they're entertaining to go and watch, and particularly if someone else is paying. That always helps. So, cats or dogs?
Dogs. Never had a
Uh,
cat.
Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
So, home or away?
Away.
Uh, do you have a favorite sports team?
Well, it's changed over. I grew up a San Francisco Giant fan. Then I was an LA Laker fan. The New York Giants, we used to have their preseason practices in Albany. So I became a New York Giants fan when Eli Manning was there.
Yeah.
Right now, I kind of follow. I'm a kind of a chameleon. I kind of, and then Yankees I follow because every Yankee game is in New York. Every night there's a Yankee game. So, but I don't know if I have a favorite. I still follow USC football. So
Yeah, there used to be the when I was in Rochester, the Bills used to have their preseason practice about 2 miles from us where I lived, etc. So that was the big event there. So just to close, Steve, could you tell me the rest of your life in one sentence?
I am immensely proud of my children. My wife and I, my wife more than me, have produced three children that are fun to be around. And I think that, look forward to Thanksgiving when they come back home, seeing their interaction. And I think that when my one when one of my kids was complaining about how we raised them, I challenged her and said, "Well, let's see how you do as well as your mother and I did raising you three." But I mean, they are two of them are already. I told them I sent a group chat this morning saying, "I'm going to be on a podcast today. They all want to see the link." And I hope that if they are happy enough for the content to follow to the end, I hope they realize that their mother and I are both exceptionally proud. And they grew up going to meetings. So
Yeah.
Ron Tompkins, the UCLA chair, his wife Susie bought my daughter her first swimsuit in California.
There you
So
go.
but
Not bad.
I would say the last thought is that my wife Hyacinth, more than me, but together we were able to produce an environment that the three kids were able to do quite well.
Well, I'm sure those are excellent sentiments, and not obviously you're proud of your kids, but I'm pretty sure they're proud of you too as well. So thanks so much for spending the time with me today, and hopefully people will enjoy listening to you.
Thank you, John, and I hope to learn more about your race cars because I used to race MGBs, MGs when I was a kid.
There you go.
All right, thank
Okay.
you.